Hello everyone, welcome back to another round of Tuesday Night Legacy. Tonight we have Pride Loam versus P.A.T.S. PATS. Storm. Let's go. On the left we have Ben playing a deck he has called Pride Loam. Now I know the Loam is for this card right here, Life from the Loam, being able to pull back one of these 27 lands that he has in his deck, but I'm not entirely certain where the Pride comes from. There's no Pride cards in this deck. Cards named Pride, like a Savannah Lions or Pride of Lions or something like that. But this deck suspiciously looks very similar to the kind of deck that Ben likes to play, which is the Maverick style deck, the green-white mid-range powerhouse. But this also has blue included in it for Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, Leovold, and of course one of his favorite planeswalkers, Dack Fayden, who is showing a great resurgence, at least at our local meta. Many of the 4-color decks are playing Dack Fayden at this time. And it might be because of this card, Orcish Bowmaster, which is making an appearance in this deck as a 4-of. I believe it is one of the only black sources besides maybe Leovold himself. Being able to target a player to force them to draw 2 and discard 2 to grow your Orcish Bowmaster is not a bad plan. Otherwise, this deck is kind of winning through the grinding strategy, having some removal in the form of Swords to Plowshares and Punishing Fire, being able to recur the fire with the Grove of the Burn Willows, making your opponent gain a little bit of life to get your removal spell back. And the rest of it is just good old Maverick. We got some Knight of the Reliquaries and Endurance. Of course, Mawlock is here. And a 4th Eorlingas, just in case you want to flood the field with all these 2/2 Knights with Haste and Trample, and then become the Monarch. And on the right, you have Dylan playing a deck he has called PATS, which I can only assume stands for Peer into the Abyss Tendrils Storm. Because this deck is all about getting to play this card, Peer into the Abyss, and drawing half of your library and being able to cast these 4-of copies of Cabal Ritual, Dark Ritual, and Lotus Petal, getting all these free casts, and then casting Tendrils of Agony once you have gone off for quite a bit of time. And of course, Tendrils of Agony, you only need to cast 9 spells in order to kill your player outright with the actual cast of Tendrils itself, dealing 20 damage. Otherwise, this deck is basically a control deck. It has 4 Force of Will, and it runs 4 Dress Down, and I believe this is to control any kind of creature-based strategy that might slow down your deck, being able to flash it in during your opponent's end step and then go off as a combo on the next turn. This deck also runs 4 copies of the One Ring, which kind of buys you another turn to get it into play, and then also helps to add to that draw effect, being able to draw more things in order to go off harder and eventually win with that Tendrils. Now that you're all caught up, let's get into the games. Players are shuffled up and ready to go. We have Dylan on the play here, starting with a Preordain. Just an easy cantrip, the Scry 2 and Draw 1 that has recently been unbanned in the Modern format. Has been around in Legacy for quite a while, though. Not a ton of decks run it. I can see why Dylan would be running it here. He wants as much filtering as possible. We see Ben do a turn 1 Chrome Mox play into a turn 1 Chalice, which is always a great play. Chalice of the Void, apparently not in the list that he gave me for this specific matchup. That's okay, we will do our best to see what is going to be. I'm sure everything else is pretty close. So Chalice on 1 is going to hurt quite a bit here. Now this is interesting. So we see Dylan trying to cast Chalice, or cast Ponder, a flashed in Orcish Bowmaster. And I think maybe the players might be talking about what's going to happen here. It should be countered. I mean, Ponder does cost 1. That's interesting. I think what might have happened was Ben kind of let the Ponder go on the stack, and because he flashed in the Orcish Bowmaster, he actually passed priority of being able to counter it. Technically, you should be responsible for your counters on a Chalice. It's called Chalice checking. Can't do it in MTGO, though. Things that should be countered are countered. So I think Ben was kind of being a nice guy there. He did benefit a little bit with the Orcish Bowmaster getting to shoot Dylan for a little bit more, though. Passes the turn back. Dylan not really doing anything. He's got 5 mana in play here. Might be able to peer. So here comes the Dress Down. So this is going to turn his creatures into nothing. Now they're all just 1/1s. The Orcish army does stick around, though, because it might be a 0/0, but it has 3 +1/+1 counters on it. And it looks like Dylan wasn't able to pull that out there, so we are into game 2. Wow, a turn 1, the One Ring off of a Dark Ritual and Lotus Petal is going to get that into play. So this is going to be generating Dylan a lot of advantage here. Getting to draw a ton of cards. Ben just putting down a Badlands and passing turn. And a Thespian Stage. Didn't know we had a Thespian Stage here. Not in the list. Maybe Ben's running... maybe he's running a one of Dark Depths. Not entirely certain. Or it could just be an advantage Thespian Stage. You never know. We see a Brainstorm resolve at the end of Ben's second turn here. Dylan trying to decide. So he's going to take 2 damage, but then he's going to draw 3 cards. This is when the One Ring starts to get pretty dangerous. Once you're taking a Lightning Bolt worth of damage at your upkeep every turn, feels kind of bad even though you're drawing a ton of cards. Although this is probably where Dylan wants to be. Knowing that Ben doesn't really have any counter spells, is Dylan discarding down to hand size? We will see in a second here. Dylan's got 3 cards down. And yeah, he does. He discards down to hand size. That's very interesting. I guess he's not seeing any land off the top 7 cards. That's pretty crazy. Let's see here. How many lands does Dylan run? Dylan does only run 18 lands, but he does have the 4 Lotus Petal. And you would expect having that many cantrips that you'd be able to find the lands that you want. This is the first time I've ever seen this spell resolve, 4th Eorlingas. So he cast it for 3, creating this Trample Haste Knight, which when attacked, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to one or more players this turn, you become the Monarch. And so even though the Dress Down did come into play, I think that effect was just sitting around, which means that Ben is in fact the Monarch here. Seeing a couple Cabal Rituals into a Peer into the Abyss. I'm not sure what this 3/3 is. Unless this is the Storm count. This might be Storm. So Peer is going to draw him half his deck. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library. Round it up. Lose half your life. So basically it draws like close to 25 cards, I think. And now we're just firing up the Storm counter here. So we see these dice representing how much black mana Dylan has, and the big die represents the Storm counter. Looks like Dylan is out of free spells in his hand. Had to use that blue mana, so Pure obviously resolved. Here's the 1 blue for turn, another Ponder gets him to 9. So that's it. All he has to find is the Tendrils, and if he's got it in hand, then this game is over. The One Ring, draw me 4 more cards just in case. And there's the Tendrils. Just in case. And Ben did have the Dark Depths there, so he is on a Dark Depths combo within this Maverick deck. Seeing a turn 1 Chalice and a Force of Will for the turn 1 Chalice. Dylan says, that's not going to do this game. Just plays a land and passes. a little bit slower. We see the 4th Eorlingas in Ben's hand. Becoming the Monarch, maybe not the strongest thing. Now, this is probably going to be a pretty strong card. Collector Oof. Collector Oof out of the sideboard is basically a null rod on a creature. Says that you can't activate any mana or any artifacts at all, even mana artifacts. So those Lotus Petals are shut off. They do still count as free storm, but it really hinders Dylan's plan simply because he can't use them for that free mana to continue to storm off. A Sylvan Library for Ben is going to give him incremental advantage, being able to look at 3 cards every turn and potentially even draw more at the steep cost of 4 life per card. Sometimes paying 8 life to draw 2 extra cards can win you the game, though. We see Dylan trying to resolve a Brainstorm here. I believe that was a main phase Brainstorm. Knowing that Orcish Bowmaster is in the deck for Ben, he only had 1 mana open. That was probably the correct play there. Just because you don't want to be giving him a free 3 damage and a 4/4 creature. So there we go. Ben decides that drawing 2 cards was more relevant here than only drawing the 1. And deploys the Green Sun Zenith for 3. Now, if I were Ben, I'd probably be grabbing Leovold here. Although we are seeing a Force of Will for the Green Sun Zenith, which is going to basically negate anything that Ben was going to do that turn. And a Ponder. Because if he would have grabbed Leovold, then all of this cantripping that Dylan is doing would be at an end until Leovold was dealt with. Only drawing 1 card per turn. I also like Leovold in this deck because if you Dak Faden with Leovold in play, then it basically says, well, they're not drawing any cards, and then they're also discarding cards. So making your opponent go down to have no cards in hand, which is pretty good. We're seeing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So this is 8 damage coming across the board and a Monarch trigger. Seeing a Dress Down. Interesting. I mean, if Dylan is going to storm off, he basically has to do it next turn. Do the creatures gain that ability whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player this turn? You become the Monarch. I don't think this is attached to the creature. I think this is kind of like, it's not an emblem, but it's just a static ability that is sitting around till end of turn that says, hey, if this is fulfilled, then this happens. So if Dylan is trying to use Dress Down in response to preventing Ben from getting the Monarch, I don't think it works that way. In any case, we will see what Dylan ends up doing here. So a Dark Ritual. Kind of storming on. Oh, this is Dylan's turn. Okay, so never mind about all that other stuff I said. Playing a Delta into Underground Sea. We see the 1 ring, drawing a card. So Dylan is safe for this turn. The 1 ring, of course, giving you protection from everything. And a Wasteland is going to get one of those Underground Seas out of there. Dylan basically has 1 more turn to do what he's going to do. There's a Grist, making another creature. Grist the Hunger Tide. Just making some 1/1s. I must have missed that. Let me run it back here. So an untap, draw a card. Oh, an Orcish Bowmaster. Yeah, that's going to end it. So Ben takes it there 2-1 with the Orcish Bowmaster, killing Dylan off of the 1 ring triggers. A fun back and forth there. It looks like Ben's Maverick deck was able to find the pieces it needed to slow down Dylan's Storm deck just enough to get in for lethal damage, taking it 2-1. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If this is your first time to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel so that you can stay up to date on all of our cool videos and streams. Thanks as always to Spellhold Games and Collector Legion for allowing us to record in their play space. And if you're interested in these deck lists, they are always included in the description of the video. I think that's going to do it for us this time. As always, I am Eugene, and this is Tuesday Night Legacy. We'll see you next time.